Hey, I want to take a moment to tell you about Anchor. I absolutely love Anchor, and it's the easiest way to make a podcast. That's why I use it. Let me explain. It's completely free, and there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and every other podcast platform out there. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Switch to Anchor and never pay a hosting fee again. What you need to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the 99% Loco Podcast.
Hey there, podcast family. Welcome to another week of the podcast. This week brings us to episode number 44. And in case you didn't know, I am your host, Chris Green. Each week, I'm bringing stories of Nashville and Middle Tennessee-based entrepreneurs, business owners, authors, musicians, and other creators. We don't just talk about the boring stuff of what happens between 9 and 5. Everyone has a story, their own unique upbringing, and a passion for why they're doing what they're doing. I personally love the sense of community around Nashville and get my kicks from sharing these stories. This week's guest is Jay Cleveland. Jay is the founder of Tennessee Peanut Company. What started as an idea between friends and family soon grew into a multi-market business that handles national shipping, wholesale fulfillment, product design, a love of community, and an eye for design. Tennessee Peanut Company highlights the history of Southern boiled peanuts with an artisan twist for the Nashville, Tennessee area. From the concept to execution, Tennessee Peanut Company is a physical showcase of what's possible with hard work and intentional design. Many people are unaware that peanuts do not grow well in Tennessee. All of your favorite roadside stands are usually spotted on scenic highways throughout the Southeast, outfitted by older gentlemen in farmers' hats with soft smiles and stories to tell. Raised in northern Alabama with plenty of memories of his granddad's beloved snack and wheel-jerking turns when a boiled peanut sign was spotted, Jay brought his family roots to Nashville and continues the tradition. Let's wait no more. Here's my conversation with Jay Cleveland from Tennessee Peanut Company. I guess I'd start by saying that, most people, including myself, really don't relate Tennessee with peanut growing,
That's a good point.
So I'm interested in hearing your story and you sharing your story. So I'm actually a huge fan of shelled peanuts, and that goes back to like my childhood days. I'm from Chicago, so I visited Wrigley Field, watching the Cubs, having a bag of peanuts and a soda, and then
That's awesome, man. I grew up in Alabama, and so there's peanuts all over the place in Alabama, and that includes Georgia and the Panhandle and you name it. And so I just grew up with a granddad that always stopped and got boiled peanuts. But I've been in Nashville for about 12 years now, and I didn't see a single boiled peanut no matter where I went. And I was like, man, I can only get boiled peanuts when I go to Florida or go to a trip to Destin or something. I was like, I wonder if we started cooking them. But, this just going back a little bit, I found a map. I love old antique stuff. And I found this old antique map a buddy gave me. And it showed that Tennessee was actually one of the number one producers of peanuts up until like 1920. And I was like, this is odd. Hickman County showed that they were producing more peanuts than Georgia and Virginia combined. And I was like, someone's got to know about this, right? And so I took that map and I went to UT and I went to the Ellington Agriculture Center in Nashville and all these different agricultural departments. And I showed it to them. And they were all kind of stunned by it. It was like taken back, like I was schooling these people that, spent their whole careers studying agriculture. And we found out that Tennessee was, in fact, a huge grower of peanuts. And they stopped doing it because of a federal quota that went out to farmers before the Depression hit. And essentially, it just put a lot of farmers out unless they wanted to transition crops into things that were more sustainable, like tobacco or cotton. And so a lot of people stopped growing peanuts. And if you were a kid that was raised on one of those farms, you would have known that your dad or granddad might have used to grow peanuts, but it just completely disappeared from our culture in Tennessee. And so I made them get the word out to all the farmers that were connected to UT or any of the ag departments. And they did, thankfully. They were super helpful in that regard. But some of these farmers popped their heads up and said, look, peanuts are a great rotational crop for cotton. So if you can prove some demand, we'll start growing for you. And so it kind of put me in this weird daisy spot of like, whoa, now we're talking about an entire economy, I just want to sell some boiled peanuts, but I think it would be cool if we go down that route. But you're completely right, man. Peanuts in Tennessee, no one thinks about it.
Yeah. So are you growing them here now, or are you still doing that in Alabama and bringing them up here?
So all of our peanuts it's seasonal, and so if we're gonna get peanuts right now, they're coming from North Alabama and they're coming from North Georgia. But if it's dead season, which 6 months out of the year it is, we're having to actually get those shipped in from North Carolina and Virginia until again we can actually prove some demand and get them growing in Tennessee, hopefully in Hickman County. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, so let's step back. So what is actually a boiled peanut? I mean, is that like the same kind you'd buy in a bag from a grocery store?
So yeah, they do have boiled peanuts in grocery stores. They also have boiled peanuts, which most people have seen in truck stop gas stations or your common gas station on the way down south. But boiled peanuts go back a long way, further than American history. But most people know them as to be a Southern delicacy. As a matter of fact, they call them the caviar of the South. They go back to the Civil War, and guys that just didn't have any money or any way to get crops during the Civil War would find peanuts on farmers' lands, and they'd boil them for like 4 to 8 hours, sometimes even longer, depending on the strain, in these folks' yards during the war. And that was what they'd eat. And they'd call them goober peas back then. That's what boiled peanuts were referred to. And so through this long history of boiled peanuts in the South, it just became like a staple dish, like fried chicken or, black-eyed peas and collard greens, things like this that just sing Southern culture. And so boiled peanuts are exactly what it sounds like. We get asked this every day through people who've never heard of it. A lot of people in Nashville are transients from different cities or states, especially the West or North. And they're like, what's a boiled peanut? And we're like, well, it's a peanut that's boiled, And so you boil them in different broths and different flavors for on ours, because we're doing Valencia and fancy peanuts. We're doing them for 8 to 10 hours. And you just let it seep in that overnight after the cook. And what you get is this savory, salty, or Cajun flavored peanut that's really soft, like edamame. I don't know if you've ever had edamame, but it's texturally just like edamame. You actually peel it open and get the bean out. That's another, little education point that I came across when I started doing this was peanuts are actually beans. They grow in the ground. They're not nuts at all. And so in the South, they cooked them like beans, which I thought was pretty interesting.
So take me back a little bit more. You shared a little bit about your story. So you grew up Alabama. Your grandfather, would I think you have a story on your website. He'd pull over the car whenever he'd see a boiled peanut sign.
Yeah.
I mean, did you just start, becoming addicted to peanuts then? And
Yeah, it's a good question. I might hijack your podcast if I talk too much about it, but I'll give you a brief overview. Me and my grandfather were close. I loved him to death. He come from East Tennessee, moved to Birmingham after the war, and married, and it went from there. Long before me. But he was just a good old working class dude. He's one of those guys that kept his sleeves rolled up and a whole bunch of pens and paper notebooks in his pocket. Usually had a Winston Churchill around him and smelled like the barbershop aftershave. Just one of those guys, and really honest stand-up guy. He died when I was a teenager, and I grew up without a dad. And bigger story, just to kind of blow it up to like a 50,000 foot view right now, is I grew up in a very rough area in Talladega, Alabama, which is just the middle of nowhere, trailer parks everywhere. And I actually just was a really troubled kid. I got kicked out of like 6 schools before I was even in eighth grade. It was just constant trouble with me. But I ended up actually joining gangs when I was 14 years old and selling drugs. And I was arrested. I was involved in drive-by shootings. And so they charged me as an adult at 16 years old, put me in the adult system. And I remained there for a few years until I actually got a break in the form of a miracle. I'm a Christian, and I wasn't up until that point, obviously. But I actually got a break with my life and got a second chance. And I was sent to Nashville from the Alabama court system at 18 to the Nashville Rescue Mission. And I had to stay there for another year and a half and 5 years parole and all this stuff that came along with it. But as you can imagine, that's a long time to kind of think about what life is and what you want to do with it now that you have a second chance. Well, I ended up going to Middle Tennessee State University right after I graduated that mission program. And I stayed there for 4 or 5 years in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And what I found there was this culture of roots and bluegrass and kind of just backyard barn parties and, all these like really Americana culture things going on in Murfreesboro that amazed me. But it amazed me because it reminded me of that simpler time when I was a kid hanging out with my granddad and eating boiled peanuts. And it was just such a simple contrast to the complexities that I think a lot of us find in this current life we're living in American culture. We typically get bogged down with work or all these duties or the complexities of consumerism and where do we stand in the social class and all this stuff that just doesn't matter when you're sitting on a front porch with a wise old man that's much smarter than you eating some peanuts, drinking a Coke, and you give him your grandiose ideas about life and he responds with something super simple, and you have to like take him for what it is. Just like give an ode to the fact that this guy's lived a lot longer than you and knows a lot more than you, and don't try to argue it. I think we've lost that art. And so essentially, as complex as all that sounds, I'm trying to get across to a culture of people that are bogged down with screens and news and pandemics and riots and whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, but it's confusing the human spirit. And so I'm trying to be this poster child for a simpler time that we've kind of forgotten about with funny enough boiled peanuts.
Yeah. So you just mentioned it. So the whole peanuts and Coca-Cola thing, where did that come from?
That's an old Southern thing that folks, I actually don't know the origin of it, but that's roasted shelled peanuts. You put them in your Coca-Cola, and what you get is this savory and sweet combination that for some reason just blew up in the South. Maybe it was because Coca-Cola has so much history in the South with manufacturing, and obviously peanuts grow predominantly in the South. And so maybe I'm assuming some old guys are just sitting in front of a gas station and said, "Hey, Jerry, watch this." And they dropped a few peanuts in his Coke, and here you have this amazing cocktail.
Yeah. What? There was a little bit of gap there, but what led you to start what you're doing now with Tennessee Peanut Company?
So I was involved in a Bible study in Nashville with some buddies, and we realized that there was a bit of a gap in inviting guys that we knew or didn't know to a Bible study. It's like guys were like they were interested in it so far as much as it would make them a better person, so to say, but not necessarily have to change any behaviors or accept something that might be bigger than them and prove them wrong in any area of their life. And so we'd have these like guys that pop in, they'd share their opinion, and then we'd never see them again. And even with our close friends, they just wouldn't come. And it wasn't necessarily the material, because we're not just sitting around reading the latest pastor book or anything like that. It's pretty deep, and it really targets the specific individual and not coming from like a group mentality of let's all go about this on the same pace. And so it's really interesting, and it can be life-changing to a certain degree of what you're willing to put in. But anyway, people weren't showing, right? And that's a problem if you're interested in Bible studies or the Great Commission or any of these things. And so what we figured out, I was sitting around and I was like, man, what if we could start a business? Because every man loves being productive and somehow contributing toward his monetary gain in life. There's something there. There's like a different motivation. And my buddy's like, "Where are you going with this?" And I was like, "Okay, so check it out. Let's start a business where we have plenty of time to actually hang out." And I thought of a few. In the meantime, I was like, we could do a distillery, we could do a brewery, we could do, just hang out businesses in general. And he was like, okay. And I was like, oh, so we get these concepts where we can actually create a business to have people hang out with us while also selling products or some faucet of free market consumerism. But during the space of time that we have to actually hang out with a guy, we can become his friend if we're not already friends, and then pour into him in whatever capacity he needs through the lens of the gospel. And then it became a thing. And so that started in that thought process, or that thought baby started in May of 2019. So it was just last year. And then by October, I had already put everything together. I found a model that worked, which was the farmers market models. More specifically, I was paying attention to a purveyor called the Peach Truck, and they're the ones that bring peaches up from Georgia. And so I saw their model and I studied it, and I was like, man, these guys always have 2 people per booth at least. They're all over the South, and they're just killing it. They're doing amazing. They do great branding. They have such a large presence in the community. They know so many people. I was like, let's model after them. And so the next step was like, well, what product do we do? Because we're not going to do peaches, And that's when I went to Florida on a vacation with my family, and I saw an old roadside guy with that big cowboy hat and some suspenders and old jeans and dusty boots selling boiled peanuts. And I was like, that's it. We can sell boiled peanuts in Nashville. And so from that point forward, we just started getting the brand together, signing up for farmers markets and events, and going from there.
I want to take a moment to tell you about Shipt Grocery Delivery. Shipt launched a few years ago in Birmingham, Alabama, founded on the mission of simplifying lives. Shipt serves members, shoppers, and communities by offering convenience and freedom. So here's how it works. Scroll through the aisles of your local stores like Target, Publix, CVS, in the Shipt app and create an order. The Shipt shoppers then work their magic, keeping you connected and giving live updates from the aisles. Your order is then delivered and arrives as soon as 1 hour. It really is that easy. I use Shipt all the time, and let me tell you, going to the grocery store is not one of my favorite things to do. Shipt saves time, fuel, and headspace. With next hour same-day delivery, I have what I need when I need it, whether it's Monster energy drinks, ice cream, and even alcohol. Yes, Shipt can now deliver your favorite adult beverages. I regularly order from my local Target and Publix, but also have options to place orders at CVS and Petco. I absolutely love it. For listeners of this podcast, I'm giving you 50% off. Yes, half off an annual membership when you sign up. That's a $49 annual membership, which is regularly $99. You can cancel at any time, but I promise you, you won't do that after you use Shipt a few times. So here's what you need to do to take advantage of this offer. Head to my website, 99percentlocalpod.com/shipped. That's SHIPT. Yeah, so are you making and boiling all these peanuts? And I don't even know what the process is, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, but are you doing that all on site at the farmers markets, or is that all done before you go to these events?
So we were doing it like the day of, and that's fresh boiled peanuts, what everybody wants. And it became such a hassle because I'm getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm tiptoeing out, my kids are waking up, and it was a mess. So what we started doing was we will boil on the first day of the week. Usually it's a Monday or Tuesday, and I'll boil like 50 to 100 pounds at a time in this big trailer that I actually got from a Georgia boiled peanut lifetime guy who all he does is build boiled peanut trailers down in Georgia now. But he built me this awesome trailer with these huge 25-gallon drums on each side of it. And so I'll boil everything up front, and then I'll flash freeze them. And we'll change out and clean out the tanks. And then for each market, what I do is I have this huge cooler that I bring with me, and we just dump these flash frozen peanuts into boiling water and get them right back to where they need to be. And then we're good to go.
Yeah, and I think are you doing like different varieties or different flavors of these peanuts? I think when I was poking around your website, or around social media, I was seeing that.
Yeah, man, I'd like to. I think I pushed the limit on a few of them because some people are like, what?" But we you have to have salt, and you have to have Cajun, some form of Cajun, and you have to have, for us, since we're in the Nashville market, which is not just some roadside on a back dirt road, you have to kind of fancy them up a little bit, and so we're not just pouring salt into the tanks, or we're not just pouring some Tony's Cajun peppers or anything into the tanks. We're doing a whole lot of ingredients that really make these things pop. But on the flavor side, we do an apple pie, which is using amazing natural ingredients. We're doing a whiskey honey, which is my favorite, and we do a maple bacon. So far, I've played with all kinds of flavors. I've played with IPA beer flavors. I've played with PBR. I've played with different citrusy stuff, but those three keep making a comeback, and people keep requesting them. So I just keep cooking them. The whiskey honey was a specific one. A long time ago, I started aging honey in whiskey barrels. And I wanted to figure out this process to really add and contribute this kind of bourbon, smoky, oaky flavor to honey. And I accomplished it with Greenbrier whiskey barrels. But I started with Jack Daniels barrels. But anyway, I started taking this honey and boiling my peanuts with it. And it was amazing. It was just off the charts. And we come out with that every year around the fall. We did a huge fall display of it last year, and it went really well. We'll do the same thing this year, and just keep going forward with that. But those are our main flavors so far.
Yeah. So what's the story with the salt and lantern honey? Is that the honey that you're using for the peanuts?
Yeah. Salt and lantern is a kind of a nod to salt and light in the Gospel of Matthew, just be the salt and light of the earth. But what we were doing was I was trying to create products at the time. This was before Tennessee Peanut Company. I was trying to create products that they could actually be a resource for missions in general. The meaning, like, whatever money comes to this product beyond the cost, I'm just going to give toward global and international missions. And Salt and Lantern was kind of the baby that was born out of that. So that's our barrel aged honey. We started with Jack Daniels and actually had Jack Daniels master distiller help us through that process, because I had no idea like the science behind aging something in a barrel could be so difficult, but it is. It was such a maintenance issue, and I had no idea what kind of reactions were going on that I was trying to pay attention to. But
Yeah.
he helped us, and it was such an amazing thing to be able to sit with this guy week after week, and him just pour into me all these old school distilling concepts for honey of all things. And so, what I'm probably thinking about doing with Salt and Lantern is just kind of opening it up to other makers and artisans and whatever products they're using who want to be some sort of contributor to global missions, and kind of creating its own brand on that.
So are you doing this full time?
I am kind of doing it full time. I was a nonprofit director for 6 years, 5 or 6 years, up until October this past year. And I had a back injury. The nonprofit was a downtown nonprofit, and it was pretty much imagine like a Amazon warehouse where everything in it is new, and you just give it away free to communities and people that need it. And I overworked myself when we had a staff shortage for like a month, and I was just like busting my tail in this warehouse, and ended up hurting my back, of course, like a dummy. And so that put me out of the game for like a month, because I had to go to the ER. I was in the bed. I was doing physical therapy, and so all the while I had already started Tennessee Peanut Company just as a side hustle. And little did I know that it was going to become a semi full time hustle. But in the wake of COVID 19, once that hit, that was obviously detrimental to farmers markets. It was detrimental to events, and it was detrimental to the food industry in general. And so that impacted us in a big way. And so I kind of went back to my roots of branding and design work and web and business advisement on the side to kind of make ends meet during the process.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So I know the events arena, I guess you'd say, is kind of shut down right now, but I know farmers markets are going pretty strong right now. But like, what farmer markets are you regularly at?
So it's all around Nashville. We're at the East Nashville Farmers Market. The East Nashville Farmers Market's amazing. It's on 5th and Woodland. So many just amazing people out there that are giving their life and soul into something they really believe in, their products that they're making, and these age-old family recipes, and you name it, it's out there. We do the Nolensville Farmers Market, which is closer to the Rutherford-Williamson line. And then we do the Creve Hall Farmers Market, which is kind of central to South Brentwood area down near Franklin Pike and Nolensville. And then what else are we doing? Gosh, I do so many. Oh, we do Peach Truck has a brick and mortar now, which is phenomenal. And we're there on Wednesdays and Fridays. And so that covers about 5 days of our week there. And we're doubling up actually for a little bit. We did the Nashville Farmers Market until COVID hit. But since the Nashville Farmers Market is run by the mayor's office, their stipulations were almost too intense for us to make any money, just because, I mean, they had to survive, and they did such a fantastic job of implementing all these regulations. But at the same time, for us, it was like, oh man, we just can't do it. So we kind of pulled back and simplified and readjusted our budget and everything, and went back at it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Peach Truck has their own brick and mortar now. Where's that located at?
They do. It's I think the exact address is 900 East Trinity Lane. So it's in East Nashville, and
okay.
I think during the off season, Stephen Rose, the owner, just completely redid this place. I think his brother was telling me, and it's a phenomenal place, man. It's exactly what you'd expect for the Peach Truck to be in. It's just an old building. It looks like it was an old gas station. They painted it white, put some nice furniture inside, and slapped a Peach Truck logo on the front. But they have this really cool drive-through, especially during the COVID thing going on. And you drive through, you pick up your peaches, go a little bit further, you can get your boiled peanuts or roasted peanuts. And Amelia's flour truck is there a few days a week too. So it's a really cool concept.
Yeah, and that's awesome. You were able to kind of collaborate with them on that. So,
oh my gosh, man! Especially for one, it's like they're such a savior during this time of really being really hard on food focused businesses. But secondly, like, how cool is it to be like studying this business and creating your entire business model off of it, and then all of a sudden they shoot you an invite to come set up shop anytime you want. It was just like blew my mind.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we've been trying to actually get up to the Nolensville Farmers Market. We have a friend. He runs CD's Barbecue. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. His name's Chris Davis.
Where's that at?
He has a food truck. It's Chris Davis runs that, and I think he's regularly at the Nolensville Farmers Market too. And he's like, you got to get up here to see this. So that's probably the closest one to us anyway, because we're actually down in Spring Hill.
Oh, you're in Spring Hill. Y'all are opening up a new farmers market in Thompson Station, so that will be closer to you. I don't think it's very packed yet with vendors, but I think they've started. And then I'm getting constantly invited down to Spring Hill from the city themselves, which has been really cool. And man, I think there's this. Oh, it's in Columbia. It's Glover's Secondhand Goods or something like that. I don't want to like butcher it up, but they've been really cool to talk to. They're starting a market too. Yeah, Glover's Secondhand Collective Market. And so they're doing that in Columbia, which Columbia and Spring Hill both are just kind of jumping and jiving right now, which is really cool to see compared to like when I came here 12 years ago, it was nothing, but it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, I think that Glover's is in this old arts building, possibly, if I'm thinking correctly. They took this old arts building and they restored it, and there's like a co-work space in there. There's a juice company. Yeah, it's cool down there in Columbia. If you haven't been down there, even on the square of all the shops and everything they have going on. So
I love the square. That whole area is kind of my dreamboat paradise. And so I probably just need to move down there. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, You can get a lot of land down there.
That's what I'm
You're
after,
looking.
man. It'd be really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to be somewhere central to Nashville, but my bet is that the soil is not going to take to peanuts on a mass scale. I think we're going to have to have something a little bit more sandy, and that's probably why Hickman County did so well back in the early 1900s.
Yeah. So the thing with the Hickman County, why was that? Because of the soil there?
Yep. So the soil is a lot sandier, and it allows for the peanuts to grow a little bit more freely and become larger in general. Whereas rest of Middle Tennessee, I mean, we have such rocky ground that it's so hard to grow peanuts. I've had multiple people come up to me and say, "Hey, I'm growing peanuts and I'm in Nashville," and I'm like, "Well, show them to me." And one guy actually brought me some, and they looked really good. He had like an acre of peanuts, and so I think we're going to do some green peanuts come harvest season with his peanuts, which would be really cool. But for the most part, folks are struggling to grow peanuts in Middle Tennessee.
So could you just, I mean, I don't even know the process, but could you just like try to grow them like in your yard or?
Yeah. So what you do is you get some peanuts from me, and then you go bury them, and then water it, and then hope some peanuts grow. So, the process with peanuts is you can't see them because they're underground. You'll actually see the plant grow up, but the peanuts are underground. So, depending on when you would actually plant them, and you would have a 3 or 4 month process where you go actually get them out and see what they look like. And so that's what you do. And I'd be happy to give you some peanuts if you want to try.
Well, I got to get some peanuts from you anyway at some point.
Yeah, we could do, yeah.
So are you, is your family helping you out with this? Or are you doing this on your own or?
Well, my wife is stay at home, and we have a 10-month-old and we have a 4-year-old. And I try to get them out to the market as much as possible. But as you can imagine, it's a hassle. My 4 year
Yeah.
old is like, he's a great salesman for like a minute, and then he's off after ice cream or brownies or whatever his little nose will bring him to. And so this was definitely in hopes of being something, that the family can be a partaker in. And that includes like any of the guys that are working along with us, their families too. It's definitely envisioned as something where you're spending quality time with people that you care and love. And if it drifts from that, then it's not really worth it for us anymore. I know that that kind of sounds foolish to a lot of people that might be entrepreneurs or makers, and I totally get where they're coming from. But for us, it's like, man, we just want to spend as much time as possible with the people that are in our lives and not be distracted.
Yeah. So if you weren't doing this now, and I know you haven't been doing it very long, would you still be working for the nonprofit or in that area or in the industry?
Probably not. I kind of I love the nonprofit world, but it's kind of well, I'm coming from a biased position here, but the nonprofit world has a whole lot of sticky parts that I'm probably just not going to do for the rest of my life. With that said, like there's plenty of ways to help people without working at a nonprofit, and that's what we'll continue to do. But toward the beginning of last year, one of my clients ended up starting a kind of a club for people that like sportsmen and outdoors activities down in Franklin. And I helped him with that as much as I could. And that also ended up into a kind of a part-time, full-time position as well. Going from the branding and the communications, and then all of a sudden I'm running hunts and teaching folks how to fish or fly fish or shoot skeet, and so it kind of blew my mind and had me thinking of a different direction in that regard. So to answer your question, if I went back to a different real job, so to say, I'd probably be in the outdoor industry.
So, hey, I wanted to mention too, your website. You don't just have to be in Nashville area to get your peanuts. It looks like you actually have an online store and you can ship that pretty much wherever.
I do. I will ship nationwide. Any of our roasted peanuts that come in the shell, any of our roasted peanuts that are out of the shell, our merch and our gear. And we are going to be adding boiled peanuts that are already cooked and flash frozen in vacuum sealed bags. We'll start shipping those next week. And so those will hit the site. That's really exciting because there are so many people that are, I call them displaced all around the country that are from the South, and they love boiled peanuts and don't have anywhere they're at. So that'll be really cool to see that go up and running.
Yeah, and with that said, can you tell the listeners how they can find you either on the web or on social media?
Yeah, so go see us at Tennessee, spelled out, peanut.com. That's simple. You can find us on Instagram at Tennessee Peanut Co. and Facebook is Tennessee Peanut Co. too. And or just like shoot me an email. I love talking to people and hearing from people. My email is jay@tennesseepeanut.com.
Well, cool, Jay. This has really been awesome, and it was great talking with you. It's been a pleasure to have you on here.
I appreciate what you do, man. It's really cool. And thank you for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can always email me at 99percentlocalpod@gmail.com. Or you can actually drop by the contact page on the website and send a voice message that may appear in a future episode. Speaking of the website, you can find it at 99percentlocalpod.com. And while you're there, make sure you catch up on any and all past episodes. If you'd like to support the show, you can do it in a few different ways. Please follow the podcast on Instagram or Facebook at 99percentlocalpod. Leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. The best thing you can possibly do is share this podcast with your friends who might want to check it out. Lastly, would you consider contributing to this podcast on a one-time or ongoing basis? All contributions that I receive, 10% of that goes to the Well Outreach in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And until next week, stay safe and be kind to those around you.